Welcome back to the Delaware Way. Many look at the state funding of education and say it is outdated. Many look at the state funding in education and say people who are of low income or of special needs are falling behind because they are not getting the funding. And now that's been taken to court. Ryan Tack-Hooper is legal director of the ACLU Delaware. Thanks for being here. What are you suing the state over exactly?
So this is about the kids that are being left behind in the current system. When we look at the state's testing, which is set up to ask, are kids meeting the things they need to meet to become productive members of society, to go on to college? When you look at those scores, you see that 2/3 of low-income kids are not at grade level. And when you have 1 or 2 kids in a class of 20 who's not quite getting it, that might be a problem with the kids. But when you have 2/3 of a cohort of kids, that's a problem with the system. And we've got to change the system so that they have a realistic chance at getting a good education.
It's easy enough to say there's a problem with the system, but what is the problem with the system? It can't always just be money, right?
It's not just about money. In fact, if you look at what the state has done in the last 15 years, it's set up a number of commissions and asked this question: what is going on in our schools? Why are we not able to reach this huge number of kids who are failing? And those commissions have come back and said very similar things each time. They say, look, you need reading specialists in schools, you need counselors who can help teachers deal with behavioral problems that they encounter, you need supports for kids that have to get up to grade level in their English, they might not speak English at home, and a list of basic resources kids need to have a fair shot. Each time the commission comes back and says, these are the things we need to make schools succeed, and each time the legislature hasn't been able to get it together to make those things happen in every school.
I'll tell you what the problem is always with these lawsuits, and anytime anybody talks about school funding, one of the problems is that people in suburbia, people in well-to-do neighborhoods look at your lawsuit or look at any change to school funding and they say, oh great, they're going to help the kids in Wilmington, they're going to take money away from my kids. Is that what's at the bottom of this lawsuit?
No, it's not. In fact, we're not even saying that all schools need to be the same or they all need to get the same amount of money. What we are saying is that there are students, and these students are actually in every school across the state, who are not being well served by the way the schools function. And there are students in rich schools, there are students in poor schools who are failing because they're not getting the resources they need. Now we can get those resources to them in different ways, right? One way we can get the resources to them is just being more efficient in how we allocate the money, giving schools more flexibility in how they spend it. Right now, about 90% of the state money is just teacher salaries. And so, and it goes straight to the teachers. There's no flexibility in how the money is spent. We think if schools had the ability to decide what they need in that particular school, they might be able to spend it in a more efficient way, just using the same amount of dollars that are already allocated.
I don't get quite how that works. If 90% is used for teachers' salaries, and you're saying you can just allocate the rest of the 10% differently, is that it?
No, we're saying, so I might be a school that has money for 15 teachers. And if you gave me that money to choose how I would spend it, some of the things I might do would be, maybe I'll have 14 teachers and I'll use the extra money to try to make the life of those 14 teachers better, that they'll have more resources, more options. There's flexibility there.
You know, the ears of teachers' unions across the state just perked up when you said that, because if you're saying reallocate money and take away teachers' jobs, they're going to fight you on this.
So this is actually what schools are already doing. The most hard-pressed schools have to make a choice between hiring paraprofessionals, hiring teachers in the classroom, and there are very limited choices they can make about that. And when we talk to teachers about what they want, teachers union about what they say is they have idealistic teachers who go into schools to try to make a difference, but they end up with classrooms that have 30 students. They don't have the support they need, the counseling support, the resources they need to be able to make the difference they want to make. And they end up moving to classrooms that are easier, where students who come in with less problems that have smaller classes. And that's one of the core problems we have in the system, is that the classrooms with the highest need, teachers who are idealistic and want to make the change there, are not getting the support they need in that classroom. And so getting that support is about getting money to those classrooms, and it's about giving those schools the flexibility to give the teachers who are there the support they need.
And that's the bottom line of your lawsuit. You just want to give the schools and the school districts the flexibility to use the money exactly the way they want. Is that right?
It's not the bottom line. We think there are lots of ways to achieve this, right? The bottom line of the suit is we want every student to have the resources they need to have a reasonable chance of success. And one of the ways you achieve that is by getting a little bit more flexibility in spending. But there are lots of other aspects to it, lots of other ways to fix it. And that's what the commissions have said throughout the years, right? ways. There's lots of things we can be doing to try to improve this, make things more efficient, choose differently how we're spending our money as a state so that we make sure that they have those resources.
Is the state fighting you on this?
So they have moved to dismiss the case. They disagree with us that there's a constitutional obligation to make the schools good, and we'll see where that goes. I think the state is in general agreement with us on the subject of the schools failing these students. Where we disagree is the role of the courts and whether the constitutional obligation is there.
So if they don't disagree with you, why go through the process of going through the courts?
So for decades, Delaware politicians have said schools are really important. We want to make investments to make our schools succeed, but they haven't been able to do it. And whether that's a matter of political roadblocks, it doesn't seem to be a matter of disagreement about the importance of schools. And we think that the purpose of having a constitutional amendment that says you have to have general efficient schools is that this is supposed to be above that level of politics. It's supposed to say this is one of the most important things our state should be doing, and this shouldn't be lost in petty political squabbles.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And please come in and tell us how the lawsuit proceeds.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Ryan Tack-Hooper, Legal Director of the ACLU Delaware. Do you have a young environmentalist in your family? Now they could be up for an award. We'll tell you about it when the Delaware Way continues.